Hi, I'm Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA and an advanced QuickBooks Pro advisor. And working with QuickBooks Desktop Inventory is one of my specialties. This video is split into two parts. The first part, I'm going to show you how to make regular day-to-day inventory adjustments into your QuickBooks that are part of the routine that anyone that manages inventory needs to do, needs to check that your accounting system has the same amount of inventory that's physically in your warehouse. So I'm going to show you those day-to-day routines of making inventory adjustments. On the second part, I'm going to show you how to fix errors in a massive scale. One of the things I do quite a bit is deal with QuickBooks files that are a complete mess when it comes to inventory. And they have hundreds or thousands of items. And adjusting those items one by one takes forever. So I devised a proprietary process to make those changes in batch, and I have a special template that I sell, which I'll show you how that works, that you can use on your own if you need to make changes into a QuickBooks file that is a complete mess. So let's go with part one, how to make inventory adjustments. The first premise that we want to set forth is that we're going to pull the inventory numbers from QuickBooks and we're going to compare them physically against what we have. And then we want to make an adjustment. So for example, let's say I'm going to go to the reports menu and I'm going to go to inventory and then inventory valuation summary, which will tell me all the items that I have in stock, the quantity on hand, and the asset value. This total asset value of $30,638 is going to match the same asset value that's on my balance sheet. So let me go to reports, company financial, and balance sheet standard, and show you that my inventory asset amount is $30,368.38. In most cases, that balance sheet inventory asset will match my inventory valuation. Now, there are cases in which your QuickBooks file is so messed up and it has adjustments from multiple accountants and people that don't know what they're doing, messing with the inventory asset value, where these two numbers will not match. There's some additional troubleshooting that needs to be done at that point. But let's just assume for a second that our balance sheet and our inventory valuation summary are correct. However, we're looking at this right now and we're comparing against physically what we have in the warehouse, and it turns out that the numbers are different. So let's say, for example, that we're looking at the door frame and we physically have 25 in stock. So our QuickBooks says we have 21, but we physically have 25, and we want to adjust that up, bring that up. And then we're looking at this item here called LK doorknobs, and QuickBooks says we have 122, but in reality we have 80. So what we need to do is we need to bring this one up to 25 and that one down to 80. So how do we do that? We're going to click on the vendors menu, inventory activities, adjust quantity value on hand. Depending on your version of QuickBooks, you may have an inventory menu right next to vendors, and the menu may be right there. In my version, it was vendors, inventory activities, adjust quantity value on hand. So we know the two items that we need to adjust. So we basically click on the drop-down menu here, and we find the two that we want to adjust. So we want to adjust door frame, and then we also wanted to adjust LK doorknobs. Up here, we're going to choose the date in which we're going to make the adjustment effective. So let's say it's going to be December 15th. And then the adjustment account is against which account in my general ledger, in my profit and loss report, we want that increase in value or decrease in value to be posted to, because there will be in fact an adjustment or a change in my accounting results. So let's say I'm going to choose cost of goods sold, and that's a typical account that is used. And let's say there's no job associated or no class. A reference number, we're going to call this one 4455, and that's just an internal number that you can use as you please. So let's make the actual adjustment. So we said we were going to bring the door frames up to 25, and we were going to bring down the doorknobs down to 80. So as you put those numbers in there, you will notice that this will tell you what the new quantity is, what the difference is. This is the adjustment amount, and you're going to see down here in the bottom right the dollar value associated with the account in which we're going to make an adjustment. So what you're going to see is you're going to see that $30,000 that we saw earlier be reduced by the $1,400 that you're seeing there, and that's going to be posted into our profit and loss and our balance sheet. So I want to show you those. I'm going to go ahead and pull up those two reports because I think it's valuable to see the two reports as we do the adjustment. So let me just show the profit and loss here real quick. And what I'll do is I'll make the profit and loss just for that same day. That way we are seeing a little bit less numbers. Okay, so there's my profit and loss. And let's make that smaller. And let's pull up a balance sheet. And let's also make that for the 15th. That's perfect. And we'll make that smaller as well. So now we got profit and loss and the balance sheet. And we're about to make an adjustment, and we're gonna be focusing two numbers. We're gonna focusing on the cost of goods sold number in the profit and loss. We want that to go up because we're making an adjustment, but we're bringing the inventory down by $1,400. So we're expecting that number to be around $3,000. And then on the balance sheet, we're expecting our inventory asset to go down by $1,400. So that's now going to be about $29,200. So let's go ahead and finish our inventory adjustment. We're going to go ahead and click on Save and Close. And now we're going to notice that our inventory asset went down by $29,000, and our cost of goods sold went up to $3,000. So that was exactly the behavior that we were looking for when making a quantity adjustment. Now there's another type of adjustment, which is a value adjustment. That's a little bit trickier. A value adjustment is when you're looking at your inventory value, and although every single piece of quantity is there, like it corroborates what's in your warehouse with what's in your QuickBooks, the value seems to be overstated or understated for some reason. Now there's some big accounting effects to that, taxation effects to that. It's actually not that simple. You can't just go in there and adjust the value of the inventory willy-nilly. But if for whatever reason you know what you're doing and you're conscious about what you're doing and you want to make that value adjustment, it's the similar procedure. We're going to click on Vendors, Inventory Activities, Adjust Quantity Value on Hand. And then up here where it says Adjustment Type, we're going to click Total Value. So we're not going to change the quantity of the units. We're just going to change the total value. And let's go back to our inventory valuation summary. And let's say, for example, that we're looking at our brass hinges and we are calculating that our brass hinges really are worth about, let's say about $5 a pop. So my new value should now be 2 times 246. And that's going to increase my asset value. So let's just adjust that one. So let's type here brass hinges. And my new value is going to be, in this case, 2 times 246, which is $492 more, plus the existing $738. So my new value is going to be $1,230. Now, another way of doing this is just typing the quantity 246, and then times, in this case, times 5, and hit tab, and you arrive to the same number. So we're basically figuring out what my new cost per unit that is supposed to be in my books and what my new value that is supposed to be. So now what we're doing is we're effectively writing up our inventory by $492. And what we're going to see now is our cost of goods sold is going to go up by that dollar amount, and our inventory asset value in our balance sheet, actually our cost of goods sold is going to go down by that amount, I apologize, and then our inventory asset value is going to go up by that amount. So that this 29 to 50 should now go up by $500, so it should be roughly $29,750, and then our cost of goods sold is going to go down to the $2,600 range. So let's go ahead and click Save and Close, and there we go. Our cost of goods sold went down because we had less costs because we had an increase in value in our inventory, and now our asset value went up because we increased the value of our inventory, and that works whether you're writing up or writing down. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is easy. Whenever you're writing down a few of your inventory parts by going into my inventory adjustment screen and just selecting them here, we're doing 2, 3, up to 10. That's a pretty simple task. But I have many situations in which I go to a client and the client tells me, Hector, what I want is to start fresh. I want you to write down all my inventory to 0. Or I want you to write down all the quantities to 0. Or maybe I have this big spreadsheet that I want to now use to import into QuickBooks to make all these adjustments. So this stuff gets pretty hairy really, really fast. So let's talk about the template that I use. I have a very special template that I use, and I'm going to show you a couple of uses for that template. So let me close this inventory adjustment. And let's say that what I want to do, what I want to achieve is I want to bring all my inventory quantities to 0. Let's say that's what I'm trying to achieve. I just want to bring the entire inventory quantity to 0. I'm trying to write down all my inventory in one shot. So what I do is I'm going to go to reports, then I'm going to click on list, then I'm going to click on item listing, and then I'm going to click on customize report, and I'm going to uncheck all these things are here, and I only really need my item and my quantity on hand. I really don't need anything else. I'm going to hit OK. There we go. And I'm also going to do one more filter. I'm going to go to customize report. I'm going to click on filters, and I'm going to bring in just inventory parts. So I'm going to look for the item filter, and then I'm going to select in the drop down here inventory and assembly items, which are the two types of items that carry quantity. I'm going to hit OK. So now we're down to this. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make all these numbers 0. So we're going to have to do something in Excel and then bring it in with the template that I was referring to. So I'm going to click on Excel, create new worksheet, and then click on export. There we go. So once this item listing is open in Excel, what you're going to do is you're going to select the two columns and you're going to click on filter. And what I want to do is I want to sort these by quantity on hand, and I'm going to do from smallest to largest. That way all the zeros are sort of pointed out, and then I'm going to select them and get rid of them. Why? Because I don't need the zeros, right? I don't need to adjust something that's already at 0, because what I'm trying to do in this case is adjust them to 0. And then here in column C, I'm going to click equals, and I'm going to put negative of the cell that's next to it. So all I'm doing is converting from positive to negative. Press enter, and then I'm going to click and drag that down all the way down and let go. So my negative version of that number shows up. Then I'm going to copy, and I'm going to click on the cell right next to it. I'm going to do paste special by clicking on the clipboard with those 3, and I'm gonna do a paste special values. That's called a paste special values, and what it does is just replaces the original number with that. And then I'm gonna delete this column. I definitely don't need this column anymore. So now what I have in Excel is a list of my items, and now the quantity that I need to adjust moving forward. Now, unfortunately, it would be awesome if you could just copy and paste this into Excel. It just doesn't work that way. Let me show you. If I actually try to copy this and go to my inventory activity and adjust quantity value on hand, and I could paste it, like if that actually worked, then we would need to do what I'm about to show you. So unfortunately, because that's just not available, the only way to do this in a massive scale, and this example is not a massive scale, there's only like 10 in there, which in this case I would do by hand, but let's assume this list could be 100 or 1,000. So because we want to do them in a massive scale, what we want to do is we want to do that exercise that we did in Excel, and then what we want to do is we want to open my template. So I have this file here called quantity value on hand template. It's an IIF file, and this template by itself, it took me years to master, by the way. So I sell this for $50. I know what you're thinking. You know, hey, $50 for a template, and that's fine. If you think $50 for a template is too much money, then I'm okay with that. 95% of you would think that $50 for a template is too much. But that 5% that says, okay, let me see what you got. And once you look at it, you say, okay, this is going to save me 10 hours of work, 15 hours of work, 12 hours of work, even 2 hours of work. Then you may think that that template is worth a lot more than the $50. So that's up to you to decide that. So this template, I'm going to click and drag it into Excel. And the template looks like this. So by the way, if you can actually pause the video at this point, let me open this up. And you could technically just retype this thing into Excel yourself and replicate it. So I'm actually not trying to hide any particular secrets or anything like that. So if you can actually do this on your own, go ahead and do it. So you're looking at, you can pause the screen at this point. You can try to replicate this in Excel. And if it doesn't work, then go back and purchase the template, because it does take a little bit of finagling with it to get it right. So anyway, in this template, and I have already this template set up for this, let me explain to you what the components are. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these lines here for a second, and I'm going to replace this with the word item. So these are all the components of the template. We're going to have the account, the source account, which is going to be my adjustment account. That's going to be this row 4, E4. That's my adjustment account. That's cost of goods sold. That right there is going to be the equivalent of, let me go back and do an inventory adjustment to show you. So that's going to be the equivalent of this account. So what you want to put in here is going to be under that E4. And then the inventory asset account, that's a hidden field. You actually don't see it there. That happens behind the scenes to know where in the balance sheet that adjustment is going to hit. And as I showed you earlier with that, with the profit and loss and the balance sheet next to each other, you actually understand how that will work. Then the date, this needs to be consistent across, so you have to use the exact same date for the adjustment that you want. So let's say, for example, we want to make this adjustment on the 16th, so I'll modify that real quick, and I'll copy and paste this down, and this date has to be the same. If you don't make it the same, you're going to have an issue. Now, all the other components that are there, just don't touch, just leave them there. This right here, I4, is going to be this right here, the reference number. So let's make that 22376. Then this one that says to print N, that's nothing. You really don't need that. And then this is the quantity that you are about to adjust. This right here, K5. That's the quantity we're about to adjust. So we're about to get there. And then everything else, we really don't have to do anything else with this template. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch back to this other spreadsheet that I have. And I'm going to count the number of rows that I'm working with. So in this case, I am working with 10 rows. And you may want to just select them. And you can read it right there when you select them. That little tooltip tells you 10R. That means 10 rows. And I need to know how many rows I'm bringing in, because it's actually a very important piece of modifying the template to work for you. So back into my template, I only have one row here for the SPL. SPL means split. That means row, basically. So there's already one in there. So what I do is I want to insert 9 more like this. I'm going to right click and click insert. And I'm going to copy everything that's there now just to make sure that the data is being copied throughout and I don't miss anything. So I'm going to select what's there now and just click and drag down like this. And just notice that some things are going to be changed automatically when you drag, such as the dates. So what I can do is I'm going to copy one line by itself and then paste it right under it. And then I'm going to select the 2 that are identical and then drag down just to make sure that no random numbers or dates are being changed in sequence. This is more of an Excel thing than anything else. Okay, so I've got a pretty good starting point. I got my cost of goods sold account. I have my inventory asset account. Very important, these accounts need to be in your balance sheets. You want to double check, triple check, quadruple check, go into your chart of accounts and make sure they're there. So you want to check that your cost of goods sold account is there, and there is mine. And you want to check that your balance sheet inventory asset account is also there. Where are you? Inventory asset, there it is. And you want to make sure that it's written verbatim. You're not going to put the account number, just the words. It needs to be verbatim. If it's not, you're going to have errors on this thing, and you don't want errors. Errors are a bad thing. Okay, so there we go. So let's go back into the export that I did from QuickBooks here that I modified. I'm going to go ahead and copy all the items. Hit copy here, and then paste them here under M5, which is where all the items are. So I'm just going to paste values, or regular paste. Actually, either one will work. And then all the items are going to be copied here. And these are the items from QuickBooks. So we're good to go there. This right here that says due date, you can leave whatever there. You can delete it. You actually don't need anything in that M4 column. And then now we need the quantities. So let me copy the quantities as well. Let's make sure I don't resort this while I'm copying it. I'm going to paste. And I'm just going to hit regular save on it. Okay, not save as, just regular save. So once I save this template, this new IIF file is going to contain the information that I need. Let me go ahead and close that. And I'll close the other thing as well. And let's go ahead and check out what's going to happen with QuickBooks. So let me close everything up. And I don't want this to be anticlimactic. So I'm actually going to pull the reports that we're going to see being modified on the fly while this happens. So let me run my balance sheet. Okay. And this had a date of the 16th. So we'll have that here to the right side. And let's run a profit and loss. Okay, we'll make that to the left side. And then we'll do an inventory valuation. Let's make sure the profit and loss is set up for the 16th. Really important, because otherwise we're not going to see it on the refresh. So there we go. Okay, so there's no information there. Beautiful. That's actually even better. And then let's do an inventory valuation summary. And let's also make that the 16th. Okay, so there we go. So we got the 3 reports that are going to be modified once I do this import. All my quantity on hand are now going to be 0. And imagine this being hundreds and hundreds of items. So obviously that's when it's worth it to do something like this. And we're going to see that $29,000 should be adjusted to 0 here in my cost of goods sold. In the profit and loss, I should see a write down of that inventory. And then on my balance sheet, I should also see my inventory asset go down. So I'm expecting that 29,000 to become 0. I'm expecting it to come here in the profit and loss as a loss. And we're expecting this report to be all cleared out to 0 quantities. There we go. So let's go to File, Utilities, Import, IIF File. Okay. And we're going to select my IIF file that I was working on, Quantity Inventory Adjustment. And before I hit open, very important, make a backup, especially if you're new at this. So back up your company file before doing that, because if something goes wrong with the IIF, your QuickBooks file can be destroyed. Your accounting can get destroyed by an IIF file. And it's not something I can control, and a template could be flawed, and Intuit doesn't support it. So please always back up, be warned, back up before ever importing a IIF file. So sorry to be a little anticlimactic there, but that's really important. So I'm going to go ahead and select that file. Let me make this a little bit smaller, and I'm going to hit open, and then pay attention to all those areas that we're expecting to see and change. So I'm going to click on open, hit OK, and there we go. Look at that. All my inventory to 0, all my asset value to 0. I now have a loss of $29,000 in my cost of goods sold, and my inventory asset has now disappeared. Now, it took me at least 100 tries to get this template to work, and this process has to be followed to the teeth. And if you pause it on the area where I had the template up, you could try to replicate it on your own. So if you're really interested on that template, and the possibilities are actually really, really interesting, I'm going to go ahead and show you another thing that you can do with that template. So let me delete this adjustment here real quick. And this is going to be pretty cool as well. So I'm going to show you an alternative function that you can do with the same exact template. So let's say, for example, that for whatever reason, someone is asking me not to change the quantity on the inventory, but just change the value. And that becomes a lot trickier in terms of exporting the reports and stuff like that. But that's absolutely possible to achieve. So the way you would adjust the value instead of the quantity is you would export your inventory valuation report this time around, not the item listing, the inventory valuation report, because we need the actual asset value, not necessarily the quantity. Open it up. Now, one of the challenges that I have with this particular QuickBooks file is that it has sub-items. So if it didn't have sub-items, this would be a lot cleaner, a lot simpler to work with. For the time being, let's just work how we have. I'm going to show you real quick how I deal with sub-items. But in your case, in most cases, when you don't have sub-items, you don't have to deal with this piece. But I am going to show you this one. So one of the things I first do is get rid of all the ones that say other, because those would be the sub quantity. Those are the ones that are pretty much tied to the parent item. So we actually don't need those. So I'm getting rid of all those. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a new column here. And I'm going to, let me just expand this a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this cabinet, the name of this parent item, and I'm gonna spread it throughout all the empty cells, right? And there's a very special technique for doing that. So what I do is I'm gonna select the entire column here, and then I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna click Control G, I'm gonna click Special, and then I'm gonna click on blanks and hit OK. So that's gonna select all of my blank cells. But instead of selecting the whole column, I'm gonna start by the first one. So I'm gonna go by the first one, scroll all the way down to the last one. So I'm gonna grab the first blank and all the way to the last one before we get to column, and do it again. Control G, Special, and blanks, and hit OK. Again, this is only important if you have sub-items. If you don't have sub-items, then you can skip this step. Then I'm going to click equals and then select the cell on the top. And then I'm going to hit Control Enter. And what that does is it will copy all my formula down. Now, for some reason, I had text enabled. So let me undo this real quick. And let me change this to general. And then try this again. Equals the cell on the top. Control Enter. Beautiful. So what that does, that basically fills up all that space. And then what I'll do now is I'm gonna, on this column E here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring in the name of that full path using the sub item as well. So what I'll do is I'm gonna click here and start my formula. I'm gonna do if this information here is blank. So I'm gonna do equals and put quote quote. Then just give me this piece of information. If it's not blank, by doing another comma, just make sure that you're looking at the formula there, you're gonna give me this information, and then you're gonna give me quote, colon, quote, and then this information, okay? And then between these two, I have to put an ampersand, letting it know that what I'm doing is I'm bringing in text. So I'm going to do is I'm going to select that little comma there and do an ampersand instead. And that little comma there and do an ampersand instead. If this is like, wow, what the heck are you doing type of thing, this is only important if you have sub-items. So that's something, it's just an Excel technique that you need to learn. And I'll press enter. And let me select that and make sure that that's general again. Press enter one more time, beautiful. And I should be able to click and drag this down. And it will now bring in all my information with the full path. Name, item, and sub-item. And then I have to clean this up, okay? So there's a couple ways to clean this up, and it does get a little bit tricky. I do need to get rid of all the subtotals. So we have to look for, it's anything that's subtotaling, like this total hardware, total wood, all the subtotals I need to get rid of. So one of the things I can do is I can copy this column and paste it back in values. That way I have a clean item list. And I'm gonna select my entire chart here, click on filter. And then I'm gonna filter this by name. I'm gonna sort from A through Z. And then everything that has the word total in it, I don't need, okay? So I can get rid of all these totals. Perfect. And then I can also get rid of anything that's total on this side. So I'm gonna get rid of that total and get rid of that one as well. Okay, so that would also allow me to get rid of these leading rows. And we should have a clean item list. I can now sort this by quantity on hand and also get rid of anything that doesn't have data. So again, this is more Excel than QuickBooks than anything else, but these cleanup techniques are extremely important. So I'm gonna get rid of all this stuff here, and the only thing I'm gonna keep is my asset value, my average cost, and my quantity on hand. And again, going back, the premise was that what I was trying to do is I was trying to take maybe a really large list and modifying the average cost of my units in a massive way. So I also want to make sure that there's a formula here. So I'm going to replace asset value with the quantity on hand times the average cost. That way, this is not a fixed number, it's a formula. Drag that down, which shouldn't change much. And then I'm going to go in there and actually change all my average costs. So let's say, for example, this is supposed to be 2,000, and this is supposed to be 250, and this is supposed to be 15, and this is supposed to be 80, and this one's supposed to be 15, and this one 10, and this one 25, and this one 1. Okay, whatever happens to be, you know, this is going to be obviously different depending on your business. But let's say this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to change the average cost of my units in Excel, because I can do them in a much faster way that I can do it by hand by doing it inside of QuickBooks. Or maybe I'm going to copy and paste from some other spreadsheet, whatever happens to be. So once I got this information, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open my template again. So where's my trusty template? Bring that on, okay? And then what's going to be different now is that instead of wanting to modify my quantities, what I want to do is modify the amount or the value. So this gets a little bit tricky. So again, let me count how many rows I'm dealing with, which happens to be 9 rows. So I have to make sure that this is 9 rows worth. So there's an extra one. So let me delete that. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and take my item names, copy them, and paste them here into M5. Okay, so I got my new item names. Then my quantities should all be 0, right? Because I'm not modifying the quantity. So I'm going to bring that down, make that all 0. Document number, let's make it 9988. And now here where it says value adjustment, all these n's are supposed to now be y's. So I'm going to change that from a y n to a y. So I'm basically telling QuickBooks that this IIF file is bringing a value adjustment, not a quantity adjustment. Now I can't bring the units, the unit cost. I can't bring the average cost, but I can bring the new asset value. So let me copy that and paste that into the amount column. So I'm going to start there with H5. Paste that. Notice that there's going to be an empty one up here. So, and this empty one up here now has to be a calculation that I have to make. So now I have to make a calculation up here to equal this sum here. So this sum is 31148. So now I have to come in here and type negative 31148. Okay. Again, I have to select all my new values and net it here. This would be kind of like a journal entry. So what I'm telling it here is that this is my new asset value, and this is the other side of the equation. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. Go back into let me close that. Go back to QuickBooks here. And just remember that we're going to change the average cost of some of these units, which in turn is also going to change the asset value, total asset value amount. So let's go to File, Utilities, Import, IIF File, select my trusty IIF template, click Open, and as soon as I hit OK, you're going to see those dollars change. Okay, there you go. So all the quantities now changed. Now the last thing I should have mentioned, and that was my mistake for not showing that, is that what we're doing here is we're doing a value adjustment. So when we were increasing all these numbers, we actually were not changing the new value, we were changing the updated value. So what we really should have done was, like, if this was originally 1500 and we wanted to make this 2000, what I would do is type a new column that says new value, just to correct myself there, and then I would go down and change the numbers, and then I would calculate the difference, the new value minus the old value, and then the new value is the one that I would replace here. Because what I essentially did is when I imported that adjustment, and let me go back and show you that adjustment, and it works perfectly, but the adjustment, it's the value difference, it's the value increase, because I never really decreased the value to 0. What I was doing is increasing the value by 31,000, not reevaluating it. So that's something that I just missed there on the explanation, but by showing you how this works, I think it's very clear. So anyway, this is a very long video explaining a lot of moving parts when it comes to the evaluation of QuickBooks inventory. And just to kind of show you again what we did, we had an adjustment there in the value that in this case made my cost of goods sold decrease. That means increasing my profits, because we magically found our inventory was worth more. So all this stuff, it all goes together. Same thing with inventory asset. Now instead of being 29,000, it's 60,000, because we increased it by 30,000. So again, very long video to explain a lot of moving parts. I wanted to kind of just make it as advanced as possible, so you can kind of see exactly what happens when you do adjustments on your own, or when you import the adjustments using the IIF template. Anyway, if you like this video, whether it was long, too long, or whatever, I would really appreciate a like, subscribe to the channel, and there's my email in the bottom of the video if you have any questions, and a link to the page where you can pay me through PayPal to get that template. It's going to be on the description, so you just click on that and it'll take you to my page where you can just pay via PayPal or a credit card, and I will email you that template. And hopefully you take this video and retrace the steps and do the exact same thing I did with it, and you'll be able to replicate what I did here. Thank you.